This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Thursday, November 14th. This is Africa 54. The rollout for the Johnson & Johnson Ebola vaccine begins in Congo, helping young adoptees build strong identities. And Uganda aims to revamp its aging rail network without China's help. We begin our broadcast in Central Africa, where health authorities in eastern Congo on Thursday introduced a new Ebola vaccine produced by Johnson & Johnson to help combat the world's second worst outbreak of the virus on record. According to aid group Doctors Without Borders, the new tools, including vaccines, have helped contain the outbreak, second only to the 2013-2016 West African outbreak that killed more than 11,000. Despite public mistrust and conflict affecting the response in parts of the region. The new vaccine, which has passed clinical trials but has never been tested in a real-world setting, will be administered to 50,000 people in Goma, a city of 2 million people. Let's hear from Dr. Veronique Oberniak and Dr. Steve Atuka, who were present during today's vaccination event in Goma.
The first day of the clinical trial on Johnson & Johnson's vaccine that was introduced in Congo this week. We did the first vaccine injections this morning. For the patients that survived Ebola, they don't need to get a vaccine because they are now immune to it and protected.
We're very happy that starting today, the activities for vaccinations, the second vaccine, can start and contribute to fighting Ebola.
Congo's epidemic has infected over 3,000 people and killed more than 2,000 others. However, the number of reported new infections has fallen steeply since June. And our thanks to VOA's Swahili service reporter, Ostea Malivika, for shooting that video for us. Egyptian officials say the thieves attempting to siphon off gas from a pipeline caused a fire Wednesday, which killed 7 people. Officials say 16 others were injured in the fire in the Nile Delta province of Beheira. Beheira Governor Hisham Amna said police arrested 1 person on suspicion of trying to steal from the pipeline, which moves fuel from the Mediterranean city of Alexandria to Egypt's capital, Cairo. Angola's opposition chief, Isaias Samakuva, 73, steps down this week after leading the party for 16 years, contending it is on track to winning power. Samakuva took the helm of UNITA a year after its founder, Jonas Savimbi, was killed in battle with government troops. The former rebel group has lost every election it has contested since Samakuva transformed it into an opposition party. In his final days in office, Samakuva told AFP that UNITA, the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, had made far-reaching changes to lure voters. The oil-rich southwest African state has been ruled uninterrupted by the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola since independence from Portugal in 1975. For nearly 3 decades, Angola was a proxy battlefield in the Cold War, with the Soviet Union backing Marxist MPLA against the Western-supported UNITA. Angola's next general elections are scheduled to be held in 2022. South African Airways has cancelled flights scheduled for Friday and Saturday because of a pending strike by a majority of employees, but said on Thursday it hoped it will revise wage offer the wage offer revised will avert the walkout at the state-run carrier. The airline has failed to turn a profit since 2011 while relying on state bailouts to fund a growing financing gap. Unions representing about 3,000 of its 5,000 member workforce said on Wednesday that cabin crew and other workers would strike over wages and plans to cut more than 900 jobs. The unions are demanding an immediate 8% increase, and after late-night negotiations, South African Airways said on Thursday It would offer a 5.9% raise from April, when it hopes to have secured the necessary funding. The union said the strike would begin on Friday and go on indefinitely. The airline flies around 6.8 million passengers annually to 6 continents among its 8 international destinations. Staying on South Africa's news, Jacob Zuma resigned as president of the Southern African nation after facing a motion of no confidence in February 2018. A former deputy minister, Mthebisi Jonas, says he rejected a $44 million bribe and blew the whistle on Zuma. Mr. Jonas is now an advisor to President Cyril Ramaphosa and has written a book about his eyewitness account, which he calls The State Capture. He joins me right here in the studio. Mr. Jonas, welcome to VOA and Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's start with you learning about Zuma's corruption. When did you learn about Zuma's corruption scandal, and what did you do?
Look, I mean, it was apparent, it was sitting in Treasury, it was apparent that something was amiss, both in the levels of expenditure as well as, I think, the costing of different items. And I think the bribery attempt was probably the last straw in the thing, and we went out and announced that has happened.
So would you share with us who was offering the bribe, and what was it supposed to be in exchange for?
It was the family that was practically in charge of South Africa, the Gupta family, and the attempt was to say, if you take the bribe, we'll make you Minister of Finance, and if you're Minister of Finance, you'll have to do everything that we tell you to do.
But they were not the president. The president formed the government. That would be the one mandated to give you a position as a minister, right?
That was my response, essentially. But of course, I mean, if you listen to the Judicial Commission and what's coming out of there, it's clear that they were pretty much powerful.
So how well did you know the Guptas?
Not at all.
You did not know them at all?
Not at all.
But they came to you and offered 44 million.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so now you are an advisor to President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yes.
And we have seen a couple of issues, including the one we just talked about the South African Airways, going on strike because of funding issues. And we've seen a couple of strikes. Of course, we've seen even xenophobic attacks and a lot of people complaining about joblessness. Now, as an advisor to the current president, what are some of the key components that you think would be very vital in revamping South Africa's economy?
Look, in the first instance, I think like any developing country, the state is important. And of course, part of the work that we are doing and government is doing is to try to rehabilitate the state after the devastation caused by corruption and state capture. Bring back the integrity and credibility of the state and strengthen institutions and ensure that you deploy within and appoint within institutions more capable leaders and people so that they can start implementing an economic reform program. That's in the first instance. The second instance, of course, is that private sector is crucial for driving growth and development in a context like South Africa. If it is not dynamic, you're unlikely to get the benefits of growth and employment, and for that matter, reduction of inequality. So the second thing is improving the relations between government and the private sector, and actually creating a better investment environment in the country. Again, we've just held an investment conference, and the relationship between government and private sector has improved quite substantially.
All right. Now, very quickly, what do you want readers to know about your new book, The State Capture?
It's essentially an attempt to try to outline why we have been unable to achieve growth and the growth levels necessary to drive development. And secondly, what do we need to do differently? And I think it has been useful as a basis for debate and discussion on broad policy and economic reform in the country.
Mm-hmm. Also, what do you expect to see come out of this new, kind of drive with the New York Stock Exchange, Johannesburg Stock Exchange coming here in the U.S.?
Look, I mean, everybody, the private sector, key players in the economy, key institutions, everybody realizes that for growth to happen, you need solid investment, and investment that is in capital formation. So I think everybody is mobilizing resources and is trying to change perceptions about South Africa. It's a difficult process, but economic reforms are generally difficult.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mtebisi.
Thank you very much.
Right. Jonas Mtebisi is South Africa's former Deputy Finance Minister and also President Ramaphosa's advisor. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump became the third president in modern U.S. history to face open impeachment hearings Wednesday. Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives called two key State Department witnesses to begin making the case to the American people that Trump abused the power of his office by allegedly pressuring Ukraine to provide information that would help him politically in the 2020 presidential election. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more on the first day of the hearings and the Republicans' response from Capitol Hill.
Two U.S. diplomats testifying in public for the first time on allegations President Trump delegated U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine to his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, to advance his personal political interests.
I found a confusing and unusual arrangement for making U.S. policy toward Ukraine. There appeared to be two channels of U.S. policymaking and implementation, one regular and one highly irregular.
Taylor and George Kent, a senior State Department official in charge of Ukraine, told House lawmakers Trump cared more about Ukraine's help with investigations into political rival Joe Biden and his son than in releasing $400 million in congressionally approved military aid to Ukraine.
The questions presented by this impeachment inquiry are whether President Trump sought to exploit that ally's vulnerability and invite Ukraine's interference in our elections, whether President Trump sought to condition official acts, such as a White House meeting or U.S. military assistance, on Ukraine's willingness to assist with two political investigations that would help his re-election campaign. And if President Trump did either, whether such an abuse of his power is compatible with the office of the presidency.
The president downplayed their importance.
There's nothing there. I see they're using lawyers that are television lawyers.
Trump was referring to the Democratic legal counsel who handled some of the witness questioning.
In your decades of military service and diplomatic service representing the United States around the world, have you ever seen another example of foreign aid conditioned on the personal or political interests of the President of the United States?
No, Mr. Goldman, I've not.
Republicans also used a lawyer to question witnesses. But the Republican argument against impeachment was summed up by Trump's chief congressional ally.
President Zelensky had to commit to an investigation of Biden's before the aid got released, and the aid got released and he didn't commit to an investigation.
Mr. I was not wrong about what I told you, which is what I heard. That's all I've said. I've told you what I heard.
And that's the point. What you heard did not happen. It didn't happen.
The support of the American people, who in public opinion polls have increasingly favored Trump's impeachment, is exactly what Democrats hope to win over by holding these public hearings.
Impeachment is a political process. The Constitution puts it in the political branch. So it's important that if the House is going to impeach and the Senate convict or not, that the public be behind them.
The committee will hold public hearings with 9 more witnesses through the end of next week. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to hold a full floor vote on articles of impeachment by the end of the year, a move that would trigger a trial of President Trump in the U.S. Senate to decide whether he should be removed from office. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Uganda's plan to rehabilitate its railways. Just to let you know, we really read your comments on Facebook, so keep them coming. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Kasali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Performer John Legend is People magazine's 2019 Sexiest Man Alive. Legend is the first black man to have achieved coveted Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony status for his work on stage and on screen. British actor Idris Elba took the title last year. The magazine issue appears on newsstands on Friday. Next up, office workers in Japan are employing some new four-legged assistants to help relieve the stress of the job by bringing along their beloved pets to the office. The trend has become increasingly popular in many Tokyo workplaces, where it is not a rare sight to see colleagues be accompanied by furry friends in their office space. At one business, employees who adopt a street cat receive about $45 each month as a special kitty subsidy. And finally, celebrating local and traditional crafts is the theme at Dubai's annual Design Week. What's claimed to be the largest creative festival in the Middle East comes just a year before the Emirate hosts Expo 2020, a World's Fair organizers hope will draw 25 million visitors. Dubai Design Week runs until November 16th. And that's what's trending today.
November is recognized as National Adoption Month here in the United States, and the Voice of America is taking a closer look at the experiences of black children who are disproportionately represented in the U.S. child welfare system and are often adopted into white families. We continue our series with the story of Angela Turker, who says she felt incomplete growing up, even amid a big family with other siblings, some white, some black, and adopted like her. That changed after she found her birth mother at age 26. The discovery helped her feel more whole, she says. At the Seattle Adoption Agency where she works, Angela has started a mentorship program to help young adoptees build their own strong identities. Here again is VOA's Claire Morin-Giborg with that report.
Part of my life is like a mystery to me. One minute I was born and I was with one family, and the next minute I was with a different one.
At 9 years old, Maggie has already thought deeply about her adoption and questions where she belongs. She is the middle child of Amy and Brett Boughton Mead. They have two biological daughters, Sophia, who is 16, and Julia, who is 8.
Adopting a child of color has another layer of complexity. I have felt like I can't do enough or be enough, or I'm not the right person for her. Like, what was I thinking? That I could do this? How could I be so arrogant to think I could, like, you know, fulfill this role for her?
Everyone is looking to figure out who they are. It's about one's identity. And I think for adopted kids, and particularly transracially adopted kids, they have to continually work through their stories.
Okay, so when Maggie began to express questions about her identity, Brett and Amy looked for guidance. They met Angela Tucker, who works at Amara, the Seattle adoption agency where she directs post-adoption services. She made a documentary about searching for her own biological parents.
Finding my birth mom has helped me feel more whole. And then just seeing someone who looked just like me, my birth dad, that was crazy.
In 2010, Angela met both of her birth parents. She began to talk to and text them regularly. She tried to have deep conversations with Deborah, her birth mother.
To be with you is a joy. That's God's gift to me.
Though Angela's quest for her origins caused some anxiety for her adoptive mom, Teresa and her husband supported the search.
I felt like maybe meeting her birth mother would kind of replace me. But Angela's interest in it was so deep, became so deep, that it helped me realize how important it was.
Angela's quest was easier for David, her adoptive father.
I got the joy of raising her from through college. I wasn't going to lose anything. I mean, you know, they're their own people. Children become their own people. And because someone else may come into their life as an important person and should, that doesn't have any impact on my relationships.
Yeah, I think the search has made her stronger. After doing it, she can help others and is helping others with their searches.
Well, join us again on Friday when Claire Morinjibog brings you the story of Alex Ladau, a young black man who at 19 was beaten by police in Denver, Colorado, after being stopped for an alleged traffic violation, and how the incident transformed his life. For more on this series, visit us online at voanews.com. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services naturalized 833,000 people, an 11-year high, in new oaths of citizenship in fiscal year 2019, which ended September 30th. This fiscal year, the immigration agency USCIS administered the oath of allegiance to 60 of America's newest citizens from 51 different countries during a special naturalizing ceremony Tuesday at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Saqib Al-Islam talked to some of the new citizens about how they feel and what they are looking forward to as U.S. citizens.
Holding American flags in their left hands, the group raised their right hands and placed them over their hearts and took the oath of allegiance to the United States of America.
Congratulations, you are America's newest citizen.
It means a lot. It means that I get to join one of the world's greatest countries of all times, be able to serve this country.
For these 60 people from 51 different countries, young and old, this was the final step to become a naturalized citizen of the United States of America. But it also marked a new beginning in their lives.
It's going to open more doors for me as a young guy growing up.
Yeah, I found it very emotional. I feel that it is a privilege that not very many people can obtain.
Becoming a U.S. citizen bestows many privileges, including being able to bring family members to the U.S., as well as being eligible for federal jobs and run for public offices. But in this crowd, many were excited to be able to vote in upcoming presidential elections.
I got the citizenship here, and the most exciting part of this one thing is that the next year it's going to be vote, and I will vote. Yeah.
I am very interested in being able to vote.
While the Trump administration has proposed major cuts to legal and family immigration and capped the number of refugees to the U.S. in the year 2020 at 18,000, USCIS, the government agency that oversees lawful immigration to the United States, naturalized 833,000 people in the fiscal year of 2019 in new oaths of citizenship, an 11-year high. Sarah Taylor, acting director of the Washington district, says one reason for the increase in naturalization might be the upcoming election.
So we did have a big uptick always before a presidential election. It stayed high. The interest in naturalization has stayed high over the last couple of years, and we anticipate it will remain high.
Coming from such countries as Afghanistan and Yemen, these new citizens are hopeful for a bright future for themselves and their families. As they said, naturalization will open new doors for them in this land of opportunities.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Saqibul Islam, VOA News, Washington.
Uganda is set to start a phased rehabilitation of its century-old railway without help from China after it failed to secure crucial funding. Lorraine Anthony reports.
Uganda may have failed to secure $2.2 billion in Chinese funding needed to revamp its century-old rail network, but they're planning to refurbish it regardless in a bid to boost bulk cargo transportation. China's support was supposed to help provide a new standard gauge line. Uganda Railways Managing Director Charles Katiba says China may U-turn on their decision yet.
China is not giving us charity. China was going to lend us money and is lending us money, I would say. The money we were negotiating with, we are still negotiating with the China Exim Bank. Yes. Now, Exim Bank is a bank. Like every bank, they are careful to make sure that they lend money where it will be paid. So they have not changed their mind. They are only working with us to rework the numbers.
The network fell into disrepair during years of political upheaval and economic instability. Now tired engines hiss and clatter, dragging drab carriages behind them as they chug between crumbling platforms. The much-needed improvements will be carried out in phases over several years and will likely cost at least $267 million. A portion of that will come from a European Union grant. Uganda is talking to international development lenders for the rest.
We are hoping by 2024 we'll have our first oil. Now, if this oil had come on board, the performance of our economy would have probably shot through the roof. And it is this economy that we were targeting to build this infrastructure to handle the increased imports and exports that would go with the growing economy.
Uganda plans to start work on the railway this month.
That report by Lorraine Anthony of Reuters. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a very good evening.